you get to see the full breadth of his character, basically. And he fires off in the air. The kid puts the phone on the ground finally.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then he's like,
I love that part. I love that part. I'm so glad you brought that up. So we picked for this movie, the movie from 2019 called The Gentlemen. The summary from IMDb is: an American expat tries to sell off his highly profitable marijuana empire in London, triggering plots, schemes, bribery, and blackmail in an attempt to steal his domain out from under him. The film was directed by Guy Ritchie and stars so many people. Let's go back and forth. You name some, I'll name some.
Oh, okay. Matthew McConaughey, Charlie Hunnam,
Michelle Dockery, Jeremy Strong.
Colin Farrell. Is it Lynn Renee?
I believe so. Henry Golding, Tom Wu.
Chidi Adjufo, Hugh Grant.
Simon Barker, Eddie Marsan.
Jason Wong, John Daglish.
Jordan Long, Lily Fraser. We could go on because the cast on this is insane.
It is insane. So I think to kick us off, why did we choose this film?
So an opportunity of time presented itself for us where we realized that we would have sooner rather than later an opportunity to record another episode, but it meant that we had to pick something that wasn't totally new to both of us. And when we were talking about it, I jumped on the opportunity to promote this film as an option because I really love this film and I know we had talked about it as an option. And so that was why I presented it to you.
Yeah. And so I want to talk about the trailer in a sec because that was obviously one of the reasons to watch it. It's funny. A friend mentioned this movie, and it's funny that people who don't make many recommendations to me actually sometimes have more sway because they haven't sort of like spent their capital, like their recommendation capital. So they said, this is an amazing movie. And they kept talking about it. And it didn't even like pass over my radar at any point. I don't know how. Like I didn't even know that it existed. And then, so they mentioned it. And then of course, by the magic of probably being spied on, it popped up on my Prime because I'm sure I said the word out loud and then showed up on my computer because, Big Brother's watching, AKA Bezos or somebody. But then when you said, oh, I love this movie, that sealed the deal for me. And then to move to the trailer, once you and my friend had told me that you love this movie, I started to watch the trailer and then I stopped 30 seconds, maybe not even 30 seconds in. Because Guy Ritchie's name, first of all, popped up and I was like, oh, okay. And then Hugh Grant popped on the screen looking like I've never seen him before. And I was like, oh, okay, you got me. And then Matthew McConaughey, and then just these names popped up. And I didn't really need to be sold anymore. And I didn't want to ruin the movie for myself by seeing the trailer. So what were your thoughts on the trailer?
So unlike you, I was tracking the film when it came out. And I don't think I was able to at the time to get to a movie theater, but I was just like, I'm going to watch that when it comes out on streaming. And I love Guy Ritchie's films. We'll have to talk more about that later or have another episode about other films of his. He has a very specific style. And it was clear just from the trailer that this was going to be different, but also the same for him. Like there were definitely components that are very strong themes in his films, but also there was this different kind of edge to it. And the cast, like you said, your description of Hugh Grant, that was one of the first pulls because Hugh Grant is a very, very strong, interesting actor who does a lot of interesting things. And this one looked like something that I hadn't seen before. And I was very excited. And also Colin Farrell showed up. Like it's just all of these big names. And it looked like they were doing things that we don't typically see them doing. And I was just intrigued and felt like the trailer itself was enticing enough without giving me too much of the story. And then it's funny to watch it after you've seen it because you realize how much they're giving you when you don't know what it is. Right till the very end of that trailer, the last the last scene that they share before it shows you the name of the movie again. Like, it's very, they're basically giving you a full summary of well-timed, edited, cleanly shot pictures of the story, of the whole story.
That is such a good point, because I was just watching it and I was like, oh God, this gave away so much. But then in hindsight, it's like, well, it's easy to say that having seen the film. And actually, I think this trailer, while it did pack in, I would say, as a lot of trailers do, and we've harped on this, but like too many parts of the film, it still didn't give it any, I don't think it gave away any major plot points, especially because there were things done that didn't actually happen. And then there's this sort of alternate, and we'll get to this, but like, sort of like, this happened, or did it happen?
Or did it, exactly.
Element to it. But we just go back to Hugh Grant. We'll probably talk more about characters like Notting Hill, Bridget Jones' Diary. Like, picture him in these films, like Love Actually, Four Weddings and a Funeral.
Music and lyrics. Yeah, it's like, yeah.
He is like, I guarantee our audience has seen at least one of those films. So he is very much a completely different person in this movie.
The first time I saw him do something that was reminiscent of this character, I mean, I'm so excited to talk about this character and also all of the other ones later on. But Paddington 2, he plays the villain in Paddington 2, which is a family movie that I've watched with my family. And he's pretty skeezy in it, but this character, like, and in that movie in Paddington, I was just like, oh wow, all right, Hugh Grant, you're being kind of creepy right now, and I think I like it. And then you meet Fletcher in this one, and I was like, this is such a feast.
I just had this image of like Paddington 2, but like remixed to look like the cover of the Gentlemen.
Oh my god, we should totally do that. Just like, have you seen it yet? Have you seen Paddington 2?
I have not seen Paddington 1, so I have not seen Paddington 2.
Okay. Well, it's fun. And actually, I'll just throw out there that Nicole Kidman is the bad guy in the first one. So, yeah, it's just, I wonder how much fun actors have with characters that are more skeezy.
I'm sure he had so much fun with it.
Oh my gosh.
It's funny to think of you're breaking your typecast role as like using a family movie to do that, which is a funny.
Yeah. I know.
I think the first time I was aware of an actor being typecast was when Jim Carrey switched from comedy to doing, I don't know if it was the first one, but Truman Show. And I was so confused sitting in the theater being like, wait, why isn't this fun? This isn't funny. And then I was like, oh, this is a really good movie. But I was like, this isn't funny. I was like, oh, this is him growing as an actor and like a person probably too.
I remember being confused by his switches as well. I was not confused by what I was seeing in this film. It was very, very enjoyable. So before we get into characters, let's talk, what are the themes for you that stand out in this film?
Some of the ones that I was thinking about, I mean, there's the obvious thing, the setup of the movie of him talking about if you're, being in the jungle and being a lion versus, what does he say? Do you remember? He says, pretending to, it's like, there's a really good line that sort of sets up the movie and sort of asks the question, what's going to happen to this character?
Oh, yes. The quote from his wife. Yeah. Yeah. Where you have to be the lion. You have to be if you want to be the king, you have to be the king and not pretend to be the king.
Exactly.
Exude it. Yeah.
Yeah. So power, I think power is a huge thing that Guy Ritchie loves to play with. Status is sort of like a different way of saying that. And I mean that more in the like dramatic sense and not in the like socioeconomic sense that it's often used, or social status, like, because it encompasses a lot of things, but status is definitely in there. And I think some of the most enjoyable scenes in this movie played with power within the scene, in the context of like what they've set up. So status is definitely one of them. We can talk more about that. And then those are the biggest ones that I was thinking about. And that also felt like they even came over from other movies that Guy Ritchie has directed, like Snatch.
Totally.
He does. I watched a little thing of him breaking down a scene and talking about things. One thing he mentioned was Class.
Oh my God, that's one of mine. That's on my list.
So go from there, because that was kind of my list. That was like my very, very broad themes I was thinking about.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll say the 4 that I have, and then I'll talk a little bit about them. So first was class, and then crime, obviously, loyalty, and integrity. And so the idea is that the very opening of the film, we are given the context of a hierarchy in a jungle. So we know jungles usually are referring to animals, but the movie is called The Gentlemen. And it's this beautiful little gray zone of people who really want to have this what was one of your words, but like that they are high class, and that they are and have great integrity and hold on to these roles that they have with great power, but they're all chomping at the bit. And so it's that dichotomy of those two spaces, and how there's this space where everyone's trying to one up each other. And then there are the folks who are doing it in the, in quote, proper way. And then there are the folks who are not doing it the proper way. And that there are these rules for this jungle that we are being introduced to. And the role of class also in the context of how the character, so Matthew McConaughey's character has built an empire of marijuana, growing, selling, promoting underground on all of these estates that are crumbling in the UK. And so there's this facade of class with these people that are stuck with these huge estates that they cannot keep up, that they have to keep up for appearances, or just they're stuck with them because of their family constructs. And then there's the way that they're being able to keep them up, which is through drugs and through this American person coming in and helping them do it. And it's just what is the true definition of class, and what is the true definition of integrity in this jungle that we're being introduced to?
Yeah. And Guy Ritchie, it's interesting. He, in one of the clips I was watching of him being interviewed, he said, how did he say this? He said, I'm not anti-class. Basically, and I think he was sort of implying that a lot of people are anti that there is a class system. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about how he likes to play with or like explore the conflict that arises from that in his films.
And maintaining that, right? Like
Right.
Yeah.
Like how does it get perpetuated through these various these ways? So
actually before we get into more I want to talk more about the themes in a second, but just based on your vibe from the film, which characters held the most integrity for you? Because I'm going to throw out there that they're probably not the most powerful.
It's funny. It's a good question, because it's almost like the ones who did the least had the most integrity. I think Colin Farrell's character, Coach.
Yes.
Like, well, it's funny because when I think of integrity, I don't think of like committing crimes, right? But within the structure of the criminal world, he had the most integrity, or he was one of the people with the most integrity that although I don't agree with his rules, he had rules and he refused to bend them. Yes. Like that his boys had at one point stolen from Mickey, right? Pearson. Yeah.
Michael Pearson. Yeah.
Like that they had stolen from him, and he came to him and said, I'm going to set it right. Don't take it out on them. This is my fault. I owe you whatever, it was like a 3 strikes or something kind of thing.
Like 3 favors. Yeah.
Right. And then he fulfills that, and then he stuck to his code. Right. And he was one of the most, people with the most integrity. And of course, there's a funny moment later when he does an extra favor and holds up his fingers.
I love that.
That was 4. Like, I've gone above and beyond. He jumps out to me, but who are you thinking of?
I was thinking of him and also Ray. I think so. Ray is Mickey Pearson's, I don't know what the right term is.
Consigliere.
Oh my God. There we go. And he also has a set of rules, and he really doesn't want to have to bend them. And he has to at some point, and I hope we talk about that later. But one of the ways that I enjoyed the way that I thought different themes were presented was in what was in the costume design, right? And how people were presenting themselves. And Ray's character is all about doing things the right way and doing things cleanly. And he can break those rules if he needs to, but he's also very loyal. Like, I was thinking about his context with Mickey Pearson. Like, he also, I think, was one of the most loyal characters of the group that we saw. And I think about loyalty in the context of the boys, like coach's boys. So Colin Farrell's team that he is coaching, those boys are very loyal to him. They're not very smart, but they were very loyal to him, which was one of the reasons why what he did worked, because, you know, he tried to help them. They're still not smart based on the ending of the film, which we will get to later.
Right.
But they did that for loyalty.
Right, exactly. It's like making a mistake because of your code,
right?
Versus making a mistake because of greed. Or it's funny because then the theme of justice is also emerging, and not justice is in terms of the law, but justice in like good and evil. Mm-hmm. And it's like almost like I was thinking about this last night. I was like, well, is it good and evil, or is it like evil and less evil? Like, how do you frame that? Because no one in this movie is really technically good, per se. Like, they're all, I can't think of someone who's not a criminal in this movie, because even Fletcher, for example, who's not technically a criminal, is trying to steal or like embezzle or whatever the right word is and to like get his way. But yeah, it's like this theme of like less evil or like good within the code that is defined. Right,
within the code. I mean, even at some point, and they mentioned this in the preview, but also in the film, right? Like, Fletcher says, we don't know yet who the heroes and the zeros are. And I'm like, maybe that's it. Maybe it's just the people who are doing the right thing and the ones who are completely self-serving. So, yeah.
What did you think this, like, I found this use of the conversation between Fletcher and Ray, I found it distracting. And I eventually sort of gave into it and was like, okay, fine, like, this is how the movie is. But I don't know. If I plan to go back and watch the film again, but like, I kind of found it annoying, and it didn't allow me to like get into the movie fully. So I was curious your thoughts.
Yeah. So let's talk about what was going on. So the film opens up with someone has been shot, and that's all we know. Like, there's an opening scene at a pub, and someone has been shot, but we don't know who it is. We know who it looked like it was potentially Mickey Pearson, but it's not obvious to us. And then it jumps to Ray's character coming home late at night, and Fletcher is in his house drinking very expensive alcohol. And so that conversation initially, their Fletcher and Ray's conversation is sort of a setup for the background leading up to what happened at the pub. And I agree with you. I think it was meant to be sort of a box within the box. Like, we're going to look at this because he talks about, imagine it's a film, imagine it's, you know, and trying to make it, you know, breaking down that fourth wall sort of thing. But it was distracting. And I was a little confused by the timeline at one point. I wasn't sure when that conversation was happening in reference to the scene that we saw, and also when things happened later. So it made more sense when I watched it again. But also, there's a scene while Fletcher's at the house with Ray, at Ray's house, where a body is being moved. Excuse me. And that helped me understand what had happened already.
Right. Yeah. And then, of course, you eventually return to that point, because you see that someone gets shot, and you're led to believe that it's Mickey Pearson. But then, you know, the story unfolds until, let's say, minute, I don't know, 100 something. And then you're back at that scene and you find out that it's not him. By the way, anyone who's listening to this obviously should know they should have seen the film. So we're just going to make that assumption from now on.
That's a prerequisite for this podcast, I think.
Yeah. Well, two thoughts on that was, I wrote down, unless I see a body at minute two and 15 seconds, right? A friend of mine said, we were watching some other movie and they were like, oh, I've watched enough of my mom's favorite cop shows that unless you see a body, that person's not dead. was like, that's a really good freaking point. So I was like, okay, it's probably not Mickey Pearson, but at the same time, I have to spend the next hour and some change thinking it's him, basically.
Well, and they set it up that you have literally no idea what's going to happen. I mean, that was one of my favorite parts about this movie. And this is other crime stories that Guy Ritchie does. He does this incredibly well. You don't know what's going to happen in the last literally 3 minutes of the film that could completely change the trajectory of what you've seen up to that point.
Right.
Because we are led to believe for a very long time, like you said, that Mickey Pearson died. And then where is that incident in relation to Ray and Fletcher talking? And is Ray just stalling because he knows Fletcher's involved? Like, or does he not know? Why is, who's in control? And you just don't really know until the end. And then you realize that there's certain components of control. And then there's a wild card that nobody anticipated.
Right. And then it answers the question also that opens the movie of, is he the king of the jungle, or does he just look like the king of the jungle? And before the last 3 minutes, as you said, he's like, oh, I knew all along. I've known everything. I've been watching. I am the king of the jungle. And he, Ray saves his life because he probably knew, because he knew what was going on, and he prevents his assassination. But then, like you said, there's the wild card of like getting into a car accident, getting hit by that van.
Well, even before that, so there are two wild cards. The first wild card is Aslan. Aslan was the friend who was at that apartment when they went. So all right, let me rewind. Mickey Pearson, as a favor to one of the lords that he is using for his growing of his marijuana, sends Ray to go pick up the daughter of one of this lord because she is a drug user and is not home, and they want her home. And she uses heroin. And in the process of Ray picking up this young person, the other people in the apartment start to fight the muscle that has come with Ray, and somebody falls over the porch. That's Aslan. So that's wild card one. That whole storyline is very quiet, where his father is some Russian mafia person, and that's who's in the car who tries to kill Mickey at the end. But then wild card two are the boys, our coach's boys, doing right and trying to kill Mickey Pearson because they think that coach is still under his thumb, and they're going to kill Mickey Pearson for their coach. And Mickey sees the car and he ducks, and the van that they're going to shoot from, and he ducks, and that's how he is saved.
I got to admit, this movie had so much going on that I didn't even pick up on that coach's boys were the ones trying to kill him. I don't know if that was either that was subtle. I wasn't paying attention. Both, I'm not sure. But I was paying very close attention. So there's a lot there. Yeah.
There's a lot there. And I think what's important to appreciate is that right before, there's a scene where coach gets a phone call from the boys, and they're like, we're going to take care of this for you. We're going to take care, we're going to set this right for you. And he's like, what the hell are you talking about? Because he's already taken care of it. Because they're so blinded by their loyalty to him that they didn't even think about what they were doing as a long-term consequence.
Right.
But all they did was save Mickey because they killed the Russian people that were there to kill him. And then Mickey is then back on top.
Yeah. I think that's the beauty. This is the beauty of a movie made this way, that I can go back and watch it and appreciate it in a whole different lens. And I can't say that for so many films. That
is one of my favorite things about this film. So is there more about themes that you want to talk about? Because we can jump into the components of the film, because I'm just dying to do that.
No, let's do it.
Okay. So what you just said is why this film is as good as it is, in my opinion. Because there are so many layers to it, and there are so many different stories going on. Like, you could watch it, and I'm not saying you should do this, or that I have or have not. You'll never know. But going through and just watching it for each story thread on its own. Because there is the dry eye. So he is the another very wild character, played by Henry Golding. You could appreciate his thread through all of it. Fletcher's thread is very entertaining. That's Hugh Grant's character. if you think about it from the very quiet thread of Aslan and his backstory and how that impacts everything, that's another one. And then there's Coach. Like, I could go on. Each one of these has, you know, it's all these different chapters that are squished together in this way. Oh my gosh, we didn't even talk about Jeremy Strong's character, Matthew. Like, I didn't know what to make of him at first. And then he's so smarmy.
Right. Oh, I did not trust him in the beginning because I think I had my like sleuth hat on.
Yeah.
Where I was like, he seems almost too front and center. I don't trust him. But of course you don't know that he's really like orchestrating
everything. Yeah. So from a storytelling perspective, this movie is incredibly rich. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting way to look at it, is to look at all the plots, sort of the various plots, and how they do and don't intersect. Which, having only seen it one time, right now at least, while we're recording this, like it feels like a confusing spaghetti that intersects at important points that I can name. But if I watch it 2 or 3 more, or, you know, whatever, watching it more times to be able to say, oh, okay, I see how these all separate, you know, where they do and don't overlap, like more clearly. But I think that's the thing is that, just praise for Guy Ritchie for being able to do that from a storytelling perspective. And it makes me think of Pulp Fiction, which, you know, did this thing of a bunch of different, almost what's the word in like literature? Is it vignettes?
I think so. Yeah.
I think that's the term. And you could see them on their own, but of course then the film does tie them together in this sort of like, whoa, what kind of way? And maybe I'm saying that partially because that's the first time I saw it done. I don't know that it was the first time it was done. But yeah, it's such an interesting way to do that, and also a great way for the audience to be left, I don't know how to phrase this, like just enough still confused. Yeah.
Well, I think that's where Fletcher's character is just so appealing to me, because he is telling us the whole time that it's all connected because he made it that way.
Okay, yeah. So that's the other thing, right? I wrote down, and I think I talked about this in a different, probably when we talk about Knives Out, but like I wrote down unreliable narrator about him, because you realize at some point that he has an agenda. I mean, he has an agenda from the beginning, but you realize that his agenda is messing with his ability to tell the story in a trustworthy way, right? Because he has an agenda. He's trying to like make money. He's also trying to sell. He's doing this thing, which is so weird. It's like this, he's writing into the script of the movie.
Yes. And in the process is self-sabotaging himself. Like it's because he's so hungry, right? Like if we're using the jungle analogy, he's so hungry to be powerful, to be the lion, that he's eating his own tail for the sake of someone else telling, you know, like, it's like he can't, couldn't
have said it better. Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
And I think that's funny. Something I thought about, and I'm trying to think of an example, but Guy Ritchie, throughout the film, he does this thing where he almost breaks the fourth wall. Yeah. By like referring to things like happening in the movie almost as they're happening. Like Fletcher will say something like, well, then why do this? And here's why. And then they show you why something is happening. I wish I could pull an example out. But if you watch for it, you'll definitely see it, where it's like, he reminds you in sort of these subtle ways, like you're watching a film, don't forget.
And it's a story that we're going to go through. Yeah. So one of the parts of this whole tapestry of a film in my mind, that really was a strength of the film for me was, visually, I found it incredibly rich. And I don't mean rich in the sense of like classy, expensive. I mean, the richness and the thought that went into the costumes, like the way Ray dresses, the way that Mickey Pearson dresses, has this kind of older world feel to it, but it's still very modern. And all of the colors of their workspaces and their homes are these jewel tones. And like The Office, there's the bar scene with Dry Eye in the back with Mickey Pearson and Ray. where Dry Eye is trying to buy the business. And it's like there are those prints of the big insects on the wall. It was just this very, like, it was my view of it was that it was trying to show class without shoving it down our throats. I just visually, I was like, this is so much fun to look at.
Yeah. And I think that's an element that's missing from films where I don't feel like I've been taken on a journey.
Yes.
Is the sets that, like, these sets make me feel like I've been so many places.
Yes.
And I've gone through through a journey because I've seen so many beautiful and different, well, not only beautiful, but like varying landscapes. And yeah, I 100% agree that they did a masterful job of showing and not telling.
Yes.
Like, this is a guy who came up from nothing and or was it nothing? He came up.
He came up from nothing.
Yeah. And they show you that with the sets, with the costumes, and the way they're dressed and all those things. And also the return to, like, Mickey doesn't return to that, but Ray is forced to go back to, this is where the class thing comes back in too, is Ray is forced to go to that neighborhood to pick up this girl, sort of rescuing Laura Pressfield, to rescue her from, I don't know, an opium den. I don't know what the proper like term would be.
I know it was a place where a lot of drugs were happening, a lot of bad drugs, according to the characters, because there's a hierarchy of drugs in this movie as well. Yeah,
and you can see Ray, and he's wearing his like 3-piece suit, and Mickey is telling him, "You're going back there." And Ray, it's hard to tell. Is he afraid? Is he concerned? But he clearly doesn't want to go.
Yeah.
And then of course you find out why, because there's so much chaos there.
Yeah, he can't control anything. But the best part about that scene, Ilan, or that whole, I guess, series of scenes for me, is like he's clearly not wanting to be there, and he is doing everything in his power to keep his own control and keep control of the situation. And then he takes Laura downstairs, and then the fight ensues in the apartment. And then Aslan's body, he falls out of the window, he falls off the balcony and dies. And everyone's down on the ground level, and they realize, right, that they need to deal with this right now. So there are a few things about that scene that are just perfection for me. One is the timing of everyone running off. So what happens is that there's a whole bunch of young adults that are there, some youth, as they call them, in the movie, who have filmed this and are taking pictures of the body. And Ray comes down and has to, they need the phones. They have to get the footage as quickly as they can. And it's sort of like somebody snapped their fingers and everyone runs off in different directions. And this kick-ass music comes on, and you see they're all trying to run and chase after these much younger people. And then eventually Ray's character corners one of the youth, and he's just like out of breath, and he's wearing his suit, as you said, with his nice coat. And then he pulls out a machine gun. Right.
And this was an element of, so first of all, that scene, I saw that scene before I saw the trailer for the movie.
Oh, no way.
And it was one of the things that got me interested, because the tension in that scene was done so beautifully.
So good.
And the status, because it makes you ask yourself a question, whether consciously or unconsciously. It's like, what is he doing there? Why is he dressed this way and they're dressed that way? It's like all these questions arise. And there's also the element of there's the dramatic tension. But I think another thing Guy Ritchie does in all these films in many of his films is like, you're going to be surprised. And so he puts you at ease. And then he puts you at ease again. You're like, okay, nothing's going to happen. And just when you start to feel like, okay, this is going to dissipate, then he pulls out a machine gun. And that happens sort of over and over again in different ways, where he's like, no, like the tension will ease. Oh, you've just been poisoned. Gotcha.
Now you're going to spew everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. There was something else I wanted to say about that scene. Just that scene was better than the trailer to me, because I also got to see, I just thought Charlie Hunnam did such an amazing job with this character.
I agree completely. Yeah. So if you think about if we were to line up all of the characters on this spectrum of, how would I describe it? Over the topness, right? Like that their characters are complete spaz buckets if they have the opportunity to. Right? I think for the most part, Ray and Mickey are at this very quiet end, along with Coach, I would say. And the way that Ray is portrayed as someone with a lot of power and also a lot of anger, and just wanting things to work just right, and is also clearly loyal to Mickey Pearson. It's just, he was so subtle, with the exception of that scene, right, where he's just like, I've had it. I'm done with this.
Right. And you see him, most of them, like percentage wise or time wise, like most of the movie is him sitting quietly listening to Fletcher, like in this sort of meta narrative piece. Mm-hmm. So you're all, that's another way you're put at ease with this character. Like, oh, he's very calm. You know, he's not interested in this other violent, all this violent underworld. And so it's even more jarring when he does pull out a machine gun. Yeah.
And I guess I would contrast that with Jeremy Strong's character, Matthew. So Matthew is the architect of destruction behind trying to undermine he has a plan to buy from Mickey Pearson, but he wants to pay less. So he sets it up that one of his farms is broken into and people are beaten up. And that way he'll have to drive the price down and still get it. And obviously it doesn't work out. But he is someone also who is very docile appearing and soft. And I love the scene where Fletcher and Ray are talking, and Fletcher's showing him the footage from the game where he was watching Dry Eye and Matthew talking from a distance with his Mossad crabs, which I thought was really funny, by the way. And that's like the most, in quotes, threatening that we see Matthew ever. Like the whole time, he's just very almost whiny, you know, in how he talks, and just very, oh, well, I'm sure it'll be fine. And you're like, you're the mastermind behind this. You know, it's just a very funny contrast of sort of presentation and delivery of what they're doing.
Yeah, I thought that character was, I thought that Jeremy Strong did just such a great job as well. Just like holding this, like, I don't know why it's funny to me, because he has to hold his own amongst these other powerhouses, and he does a great job. But I think you're right. He does come off as like somehow simultaneously like pathetic and yet powerful, like throughout the film. To go to that scene real quick about the script reading or the lip reading. I didn't have a chance to go back and look, but Fletcher says, oh, I got the idea from a movie, and he references a movie that The Conversation starring Gene Hackman.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either, but he basically says like, I got the idea from this other movie. And it's like, that's it. So that's like one example of what I was trying to reference before about like, by the way, you're watching a film, like when the characters reference movies,
totally.
it's like,
but also in line with that, one of Fletcher's dreams is to sell this as a manuscript.
Right.
And at the end, that's where he's caught. He's trying to sell this to a movie exec at somewhere, and then comes out of the building and Ray's waiting for him.
Oh my God.
I have to give another shout out to another film component, which is the music.
Yeah.
I've seen this movie many times now, and every time it just hits as fresh every time, from the first song, the Cumberland Gap song at the beginning, right after like in the scene with the bar, all the way through to the end of the movie. It's so well done, and it's well timed. And like the machine gun scene with Ray, you know, the timing again with that moment when everyone starts to run, there's a song that starts and it's just in line with everything that's happening. And it's just, I was so impressed. I continue to be so impressed by that.
Yeah, I thought the music was done really well. I would need to go back and re-listen to it. I think I realized about myself that I like when the music doesn't overtake the movie, and that I think about like the action scenes are the times when it's done the best, or it's the least distracting, because picture an action scene without music. It's definitely done, but it's a very different feeling.
Yeah, it feels drawn out in some ways. Yeah. What are there other film components that stood out to you?
Well, we talked about this sort of like narration, the unreliable narrator aspect to it. I think other components, and we talked about cinematography. I think one thing, so we usually talk about like laugh out loud moments.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is humor is woven throughout. Mm-hmm. It's not like an added piece. It's woven into the fabric of the entire story, and every character, I would say almost every character, there's something humorous that they do or say. So I think what I'd highlight is the dialogue. Mm-hmm. There's so much richness in the dialogue that's one of the reasons for me to go back and rewatch this film, because you could still get the major plot points without having a microscope on the dialogue, but there's so much in there that I'm just have to admit that I didn't even catch. Yeah. And some of that is just having different accents. Yes. But some of it is just, he really plays, like the writers and guy, like they really play with the dialogue.
I totally agree with you. This is a borderline LOL moment, but also an example of what you're talking about, where when we are introduced to the coach, Colin Farrell's character, he's waiting to pick up a food order. and there are, actually, it's the same youth from the building. I'll just point that out. The ones who see the body fall later. But these young people are being really obnoxious and rude. And so he takes it upon himself to kind of correct them, and he gets into it with them and banter. And he's like, okay, now you say something really smart. And then the person doesn't have, he's like, oh, that was terrible. Like, you have to, like, there's an expectation in the characters that they're going to have good, witty banter, because that's what they're going to do in this film. And he's just so disappointed that this kid can't do it.
Right. He's coaching them on how to talk trash to his own face.
Yes. Like how to stand up for yourself. Right. Yeah. Yeah. This is how you do it. Oh, you failed, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing about the dialogue was when the movie opened, I, had my notebook out, like to take notes, like for our podcast. And the first 30 seconds, I was like, oh crap. Okay. I need to like he came to play, like,
yes.
Like, I'm not going to get down all this stuff. Like, I need to pay attention. Like, this isn't, the way that the exposition is done, he's not going to hand it to you, and he's not going to give, it's like a laugh track, right? A laugh track cues you when to laugh.
Yes.
Like, there's no equivalent of that for this kind of plot. There's no like, and that's why we did it,
Right.
Like, there's a little bit maybe towards the end, but generally speaking, it's not how they do it. It's like, it's show, don't tell, as it should be. But I was writing furiously.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. So going off of that, who are your favorite characters in this?
Oh, so many.
I know.
I think so. I sometimes like to not do my research a little. Like, I like to not know everything. And it's like I said, I paused the trailer before watching the whole thing. I've now, of course, seen it. But I didn't even know that Colin Farrell was in this. So when he showed up, I was like, yes.
Yes. So I'll do a grouping of some faves. I have to give a shout out to Bunny. So Bunny is one of the enforcers, and he's very gentle when he needs to be. And whenever he's like walking up to you, because he's so big, he goes, incoming.
Yep.
And I just thought that was adorable. And like the last scene where you see him, he's about to go into a freezer
and take a pound of flesh.
Yes, to take a pound of flesh, and he's just like hanging out. And he's fully wintered up in his clothing, and he's just like, incoming. I was like, oh, you're adorable. We haven't really talked about Rosalind Pearson. So Michelle Dockery plays Mickey Pearson's wife, and I just need to give a shout out to her because she holds her own, and she is one of very few women in the cast. And you find out that the full quote that Mickey is sharing at the beginning of the film is actually something she said to him, and he holds on to it as a mantle, as a mantra to live by. And I just love that not all of his, but like a lot of his strength of who he is and how he presents himself was presented by her to him. And I think that's really, really cool. Also, she has a completely all-female garage, like mechanic garage, where people work for cars, runs her own business, and is just a complete badass. So
that was a fascinating moment for me. Was I don't know, maybe it's 20 minutes into the film, I'm like, okay, so where are the women?
Yeah.
And then she's introduced, I was like, okay, this is the second woman we've seen.
Yeah.
And then, but as I'm having that reaction, then they open out onto her garage, and then it's only women. And she even notes women. Like, she's like, you shouldn't be here. This is for this is not a place that you're allowed to be.
Yeah. This is for the ladies. Yeah.
She has her like own business. That's her own, her own game that she's running.
Yes.
I thought she was amazing.
She was amazing. And I just got to bring it back to Fletcher, to Hugh Grant. His character was so smarmy, and so in a lot of ways, let me rephrase that. In some ways, one of the more honest, because he's like, I'm getting money, like I'm trying to, but also the interplay between him and Ray, and how I'm sure if I were talking to Ray, he would completely disagree with me, but like there are a lot of parallels between them, right? They're both very loyal to what they believe in, and they're both very passionate about what they believe in, and his blatant sexual interest in Ray repeatedly.
Yeah. He's just like constantly distracted by his own like whims.
Yes.
And Ray uses that against him too. He's like, I knew that you would like want to go, like you couldn't resist a barbecue. You couldn't resist this. Like, and I was distracting you in order to like, yeah. He's also just so, it's funny because they once in a while in the movie, they talk about, they use the animal kingdom,
Yes.
Being a lion, being a dragon. And I think they never say that. I don't know that they say this word, but he's definitely a snake.
Yes. Right. Good call. Very good call. Yes.
Like that she's gonna get his things through being clever and like conniving.
And whispering into each animal's ear, and in the process gets stepped on. Yeah.
Right.
That's good.
Yeah. To go to Dry Eye, played by Henry Golding. The scene that they break down, so it's Guy Ritchie, Henry Golding, and Matthew McConaughey sit down, and they're breaking down the scene where Dry Eye offers to buy Mickey Pearson's company. Yeah, and that scene, another amazing scene of tension between the characters, and the tension mounting, and then you seeing like one outcome and then seeing the real outcome. I just thought Henry Golding was just an amazing adversary throughout this whole thing.
I agree, because you really don't know what he's going to do, right? You don't, like, he's very unpredictable in his behavior, but also clearly has his own agenda and plan the whole time.
Yeah, and he plays with like so similar to the other characters in the film, but he plays with being calm and then being like you said, unpredictable at the same time, and like sometimes within a scene, but more so throughout, like on a more
And so thinking so Dry Eye's last scene is when he has gone and tried to basically take Rosalind away, and she fights back, and he is attempting to assault her when Mickey Pearson comes in, and he has gone from this angry powerhouse, violent being, and then he's standing over Rosalind, and he sees Mickey, and he knows he's basically done. And just watching his face process that, that was one of those, that sequence of scenes was one of those where the tension was so high, I didn't know what was going to happen, how far things were going to go in any direction. But watching Henry Golding pull that off, like that, his facial changes that happen within seconds when he realizes that he's basically finished was just incredible.
Yeah. It reminding me of when I like film classes back in the day when they would talk about how different it is to act for film versus the stage, and the amount of I think the actors it was French films I think I was studying at the time, and they were talking about actors had to learn to have so much expression in their faces, and they see these extreme close-ups, and it's such a piece of the skill set needed. And he did an amazing job. That scene was harrowing. I don't know if there's a better word.
That's a good word for it.
Like you said, that you don't know what's going to happen. And I think it's interesting to think how that scene was really terrifying in the context of all of the shit that's already happened in this film.
Yes.
Like people are falling off buildings and getting shot, and it's kind of like, it's normal. And yet I think this goes back to the code. Mm-hmm. There's just things you don't do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The rules, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And Dry Eye breaks the code. That's like one area where he has now broken the code.
But he had been repeatedly breaking the code. And this was sort of the one of the worst code. Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, yes, harrowing is excellent because we know Mickey's trying to get to her. He gets hit by a car. His vehicle gets hit by a car, and she has this little paperweight gun that was given by, like, this is one of those threads. Like I said before, it's like this thread of this little gun, right? If you track that through how it got to whose hands that it went to, and its significance later, it's just crazy.
Yeah. Another shout out I would give cast wise would be this band of like what do they call it? Fight porn? Like they make
fight porn. Yeah, the boys.
Yeah, are they?
They had a name. The Toddlers.
Yeah, I was going to say the Toddlers. So I was trying to figure out if this is a real group of people, because the song that they do this all to. I was trying to figure out, did you know if this was made for the film or if this was...
I don't know. I haven't actually done any research on it yet. Yeah.
That was a weird... So just to like contextualize, they go to rob Mickey Pearson, rip him off. And then they simultaneously make this music video of them beating up Mickey's people and doing like breakdance fighting, essentially. Mm-hmm. And just... It was this weird moment where I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like, I really like this music video that's in the middle of this movie. And then I was also like, you bastards, you're stealing from Mickey. Like, you can't do that.
Can't do that. Yeah.
But that whole crew, I thought was great. They really, just their reverence for Coach and like,
so good.
Also, they're matching. Oh God. Like they're
matching him. Clearly. They're also matching his style.
And they've taken the Adidas tracksuit to like the Burberry level where they've got like these designs. I am not like a fashion person, but like, so I don't even know like the proper names for this, but yeah, they've got like Adidas Burberry crossover tracksuits. Mm-hmm. I don't even know how to describe it. Like, oh man, I thought they were great.
They were very good. They were very good. Should we do LOL moments?
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
So a lot of the moments were dialogue lines that, for me at least, and then other moments were like, I think, so I'll start with the one where I laughed out loud the loudest was this kid. So there's a chase scene where Ray is chasing down one of the youths for his phone to make sure the evidence doesn't get out. And the kid is on a bike and he's taunting him and Ray is struggling. And then, he's taunting him and you're like, I felt like I'm feeling this sense of like, you have to catch him. Like, please catch up to him. And then the kid gets doored.
Yes. By one of their cars. It's
right, like by one of their, yeah. And I actually don't know why that made me laugh out loud. I think probably because there was so much tension and I was not expecting it.
Yes.
But
yeah, no, that's a good one. That's a really good one. One of my favorite LOLs is, we've already kind of talked about the interplay between Fletcher and Ray, but towards the end of their evening of this storytelling, Ray is like, I'm going to go to bed. And Fletcher, without missing a beat, he's like, can I come with you? And I was like, no.
And you're like, was that your main plan? Is it to sell a script or get into bed? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Obviously, you like him. We get it.
Yeah. There's another scene, I don't know if it's right around then. I think Fletcher's about to leave maybe, and Bunny and the other henchmen come by to like move the dead body. Mm-hmm. And there's this very awkward moment where it goes silent and they're holding they're holding Aslan's body in the hallway.
Yes.
And Fletcher's standing there, Ray's standing there. And it's obviously the question of, have we just been caught? Right.
Well, one of them says, is this going to be a problem?
Right, exactly. Yeah. And again, this like tension of like, okay, so does Fletcher now need to die? And Ray's like, I forget exactly what he says, but he's like, it's fine. But it's so morbid that like half of me was laughing so uncomfortably, and half of me was like, this is hilarious.
Because I think Fletcher excuses himself to go wash his hands. He's like, oh, I forgot to wash my hands. And he's like, I'm just going to go. I'm just going to leave.
yeah, exactly.
So another one for me is with Coach when he is coming back to the gym and the toddlers are unpacking all the pot, all the marijuana. And he's just looking and he hasn't said anything yet. And he's just like watching what, just like the realization of what he's doing. And they're like, what? Just some guy. He's like, no.
Yeah. Just the best scenes are the one like between the characters or something is just,
totally.
I forget exactly how this went down with in the when Fletcher gets the recording of Matthew and Dry Eye transposed, at one point the word octopus is just like thrown in there. And it's just like, it's just meant to be this powerful moment of like, I know what's going on. I'm omniscient. And yet he's got this like faulty, like written down transcript of like the word octopus is just thrown in the middle, which I just loved. Yeah.
And you mentioned this one before, but this one was a strong LOL for me at the end when Coach has saved Ray's life and just silently holds up 4, but the exasperation on his face.
Right.
He's like, dude, 4. And then he bolts and you're just like, it was perfect. He didn't have to say anything.
Yeah. The subtext there was awesome.
Perfect.
There was another scene with this poor kid, Aslan, falls off the building. And someone's like, so you killed him. And Ray is like, it was the gravity that killed him.
It was the gravity, actually.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just again, the way he said it was just perfect.
Yeah.
About 53 minutes in, there's something about Barry White, and I'm not even going to reference it because then I'll have to edit it out, but that scene was great. And it's like this whole back and forth about like who's Barry White and then like metaphors.
Oh, yeah.
But I think to keep this a family friendly show, I won't try to like rehash the dialogue. And then one more. At one point, someone says spasibo because they're trying to speak Russian. And it's just the worst, like British accented way of saying, and I'm pretty sure it's properly pronounced spasiba. Yeah, it just.
Yes, no, you're absolutely right. Very Cockney, sort of British Russian blend situation. Yeah.
Yeah. The last one I have, I don't know if you have any more. That scene we described earlier of Ray pulling out the machine gun. You get to see the full breadth of his character, basically, and he fires off in the air. The kid puts the phone on the ground finally. And then he's like, I
love that part. I'm so glad you brought that up. Yeah. Like he's like brushing him away. Like, get out of here.
Like shooing like a mouse or something.
Yes. So good. Yeah. So good. And that also happening with the music that was playing. Like the whole thing was just like, it was so tight. It was so well done. And just, but you're right. We see his other side kind of coming out. His lion, if you will.
Right.
Okay, so let's try to end with the ending, but this is a complex ending because there's like 3 endings.
Yes, that is a very good point. So let's maybe pull it back to when the movie starts to wrap up, I think.
So there is the sequence. Okay, so there's a sequence with Mickey exacting revenge on Matthew. So I'm just going to give the titles first and then we can break them down. And then there is the sequence with Fletcher and Coach and Ray and dealing with the outcomes of, oh, by the way, Aslan has a powerful father.
Right.
And then there's also the sequence post those sections where Fletcher gets what he deserves.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And there's also, it's so funny. We didn't even mention this thread. I don't think
we didn't. Yeah.
What is his name? I'm so embarrassed.
Big Eddie, I think.
Big Dave.
Big Dave, so close.
But played by Eddie Marsan.
That's why, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is a whole thread of him trying to get revenge on Mickey Pearson as well.
Right. This is what we were talking about before, about how there are so many story threads.
Yep.
There's so many things happening in this film. But yes, you're right. There is that one too.
So I don't know that it might be a little ambitious to try to wrap all these threads together, but I think it's sort of like, how do they tie back to the main thread? And this question that gets opened at the beginning of the movie, is Mickey Pearson truly the lion? Because I think I will say I'm left with a little bit of doubt, because you had the first sort of like one of the first endings, which is he is the lion. He knew exactly what was happening. He had a whole plan, in place. And then you're like, okay, he wins. He's the like more noble, or to use your word, like he has an integrity. But then that's called back into question, I would say.
Because of the whole Aslan thing.
Because of that, yeah, there's blood on his hands. And I think actually maybe that's a theme tied into this good and evil thing as well, is like we didn't get into this too much, but he sells weed, and that is seen, or he sells marijuana, or what do they call it? Skunkamola at one point.
There's so many names for it. Oh my God.
What's the one they use twice? It's like the White Widow.
White Widow super cheese.
Sorry to tie it back though. So he sells marijuana, but to sell heroin is seen as evil.
Yes.
And that's not okay.
Yes.
And I think that's sort of the evil versus evil, or better versus evil thread that happens. And that, like, do you have thoughts on like how that resolved or didn't resolve?
Well, I think that industry, the heroin industry that he was like up against, so Lord George, he died. Dry Eye killed him.
Right.
And I'm assuming that there's going to be someone else in that group that's going to try to rise up. I think it was more just a rivalry. Weird, like we're both drug lords, but we're different kinds of drugs. But you're right. There is this hierarchy of sort of like, and he says it. Mickey Pearson says it. He's like, mine doesn't kill people. Yours has always been a destroyer of worlds. Yeah. And so he doesn't even put himself in the same category with Lord George. And so he does think he's above that. And you're right. I guess they didn't really, beyond everyone dying that we knew from that group, we don't really have any other closure for it.
Yeah. Because I guess on the one hand, it's like, well, Mickey won, so good. I'm putting the word good in quotes.
Right.
Good has won, right? Because I rooted for him the entire time.
Right.
And then you kind of come into I come into this area where I'm like, I'm rooting for a bad guy, which is so interesting to me.
Right. And then he's almost completely undermined by a mistake that Ray made with Aslan. Right. And like, I actually thought that's where you were going to go, where you're going to say, and then he almost died because of this, because the Russian mafia was going to come after him. Well, you were referencing the hierarchy, which I think is interesting.
Yeah. Well, you also have to ask though, because you said he almost died because of a mistake Ray made. Ray told him not to do it though. He said, "Don't get involved with rescuing."
That's true.
And he was like, "Nope, you're going to do it. You're my best guy, and I'm going to send you in." So it's like, well, whose mistake was it?
Whose mistake was it?
Did he? Because I think one of the mistakes there is, what, if you can call it that, is he's leaving his world of marijuana and going in. He's dipping his finger into a world that he doesn't belong in, of like the heroin and the world where worlds get destroyed. And maybe that's his mistake. And maybe he's not king of that jungle.
Oh, I don't think he is, and I don't think he wants to be, and I think that's very clear. Because he went to talk to Lord George because he was pissed about Dry Eye coming over, because Dry Eye was trying to pull in the Pearson's kingdom to his own. He was going to try to poison it that way.
Yeah.
So many pieces.
And also interesting, from the last thing I'll say about the drug world, is like one of the opening pieces of the film too is them saying, well, you're about to become legit, right? Because it's about to be legalized.
Right.
So your whole empire, it's funny because it's like, he's going to be seen as just like a legitimate business owner. And that's a problem. Like that's like things that we think of in the sort of civilian world. We're like, yeah, like, oh, I'll open and start a business or whatever, versus like, it's going to be a problem that we're going to be legit. We need to figure this out.
I mean, I guess I didn't read it that way. I thought he really just wants a quieter life now, and he wants to not have to do business. I wasn't getting the vibe of like, I don't want to be a part of it because it's legit. It's just going to be more work because it's going to be legit. And so my vibe was that he just wants to go have babies with his wife.
Right.
But it was reminded through this process that he still has, skin in the game, so to speak, and like needs to kind of hold that stature, as evidenced by the very last scene with Fletcher trying to sell the movie rights to a story. And it was called, I can't remember what the name was on the script, but it was something about marijuana.
Oh, I was trying to remember what that was too.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah, so we wrap with Fletcher trying to sell the script to was that actually Guy Ritchie, or was that someone playing him?
The person in the movie theater in the office, that was not Guy Ritchie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He looked enough like him that I like was trying to tell, but I couldn't. Well, no, because they have in the back, I don't know if you noticed this, but they have a movie poster for Uncle.
Yes.
A Guy Ritchie film.
Oh, he was. Oh my gosh, you are right. He is. He was uncredited. Miramax studio exec. You're right.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. Nice job. Yes. And that was the, yes, I did see the poster.
Or is it The Man from Uncle?
The Man from Uncle, which is another fun Guy Ritchie film. Yeah.
Yeah. So we wrap with that, which I think that's also a nice, in the sense of tying things together. It's like that closes the meta narrative that they've created with Fletcher.
Yes.
And then of course,
called back.
Yeah. And of course you really end with Ray getting Fletcher into a cab.
Yep.
And the child locks are clearly on and there's no way out.
There's no way out.
Yeah. And it's funny because you think, okay, he's now going to get like killed or the crap beaten out of him. But there's still this like congeniality between them, this like playfulness.
Like, what does he call him? Fletcher Mundo or something? Yeah.
He calls him whatever Fletcher called him at the beginning of the movie.
Raymundo, yeah.
Yeah.
So how were you left with this film? Were you left satisfied? Were you left... I heard you before saying that you want to watch it again. Oh,
yeah. I definitely want to watch it again. I was left feeling like I was taken on an amazing adventure where, like I said before, I was left just enough confused. Mm-hmm. I mean, like I said before, I missed like an entire... like I sort of like my brain deleted an entire narrative thread because it was like, you don't need to know this, which to me says more about like the richness of the story. So I was left like resolved enough that there's still like a tension for me. Like, yeah, I want to watch this again and really tease it out. But I wasn't left unresolved like I am with some films where I'm like, that wasn't satisfying.
Yeah. It's like, there's so much there. Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, the first time I watched it, when the credits rolled at the end, I was just like, damn.
It's like coming off the highway.
Yes, yes. That guy was a ride. Yeah. Yeah. And like, I remember loving it. I remember being absolutely entertained the whole time and like a little confused by certain editing or just story choices in the narrative. But also just being super impressed by Hugh Grant and how absolutely skeevy he was.
Yeah.
And just being like, I can't wait to watch that again.
Yeah. Great film. I hope that whoever listened to this watched the film first.
Yeah, I don't think our episode would make sense if you hadn't watched it.
Definitely not. There's no way. There's no way that'd be possible without us like recapping the entire film.
Totally. Which when we're done, and thank you so much. If we're done at the end, like we could kind of try to do another summary, but I thought the IMDb one was pretty good.
No, that was solid. Well, let's do our closing out. Thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you. Till next time.
Keep dancing with the devil, but he doesn't have a back, no.
as I get older, the more I find myself doing that thing. Can you see me? Mm-hmm. That thing where I'm like, that person was in that other movie. Like I'm like some sort of like detective, and I'm just like, oh, this is used to piss me off so much when my parents would do it, where they'd be like, that's so and so, and I'd be like, I've never seen a movie before, so I don't know who Drew Barrymore is. Like, let me watch E.T. in peace. Although I guess that's a bad example. She was like 5 in that movie.
She was 5. Yeah. Very young. Very young.
But now I'm like, look at Drew Barrymore. She's all grown up.
I know. Yeah. No, it's very funny. I mean, I do that too. I also just because I'm always tracking faces. So.
Yeah, you're way better at that than I am. I'm like, oh, so-and-so's in this movie? I'm like, I feel like an old senile man. Like, oh, yes, sir. He's great. I still am torn about deleting my whole really inventing that Colin Farrell was.
It's not. It's sad.
And of course, it's like he's doing, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like a nod to his character in Snatch of 21 years ago now.
Oh, you mean Guy Ritchie's character?
Well, Colin Farrell is in the movie Snatch, right? Am I wrong?
I don't think he is. Hold on one second.
No way.
Yeah, I don't think so. Don't think he is. Which character are you thinking of?
I don't even know. Oh, maybe I'm not.
No, he's not in that.
This is so embarrassing. I'm going to have to edit it out.
But which character were you thinking of, though?
I don't even remember because the movie is so long ago.
Okay. We might have to, we'll work on this one.
I know what I'm thinking of. I was thinking of the movie In Bruges.
Oh my God, I love that movie.
That's what I was thinking of. Those kind of like swirled in my head, and I'm giving myself a pass because I was probably 16.
Yes.
So we'll see if I decide to edit out this embarrassing piece. Anyways, yeah, I loved his character, and I'll pass it back to you now that I've totally ingratiated myself to the gods of film.